we're going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about what is success. So Uda, if you'd come join me. We've had this conversation because, and the reason we're doing this, we had this at the end of the day, and we thought, you really have to have this at the start of the day because it drives what you do and how you define the patients and the outcomes, which makes a huge difference around how you do this. But, so here are some thoughts I had, and as we've had conversations. So what is success? Keeping individuals alive. So we claim success with that. Completing a treatment program. Completing a MAT protocol. A drug-free life. And by the way, does that include alcohol-free life? Marijuana-free life? What is success? Caffeine-free life?
Sugar?
Is success a reduction in substance use disorder? Is a reduction in the amount of drugs you're using? Is success a life of recovery? Is success no justice sanctions, no justice involvement? Is success being employed? Is success having stable housing? As you know, you all report on stable housing. Does that mean anything? Is success relationship restoration? Is success smarter drug use? You're not using dirty needles. You're using less. You're being more careful. You're carrying naloxone with you. Is that success?
And important too, who's defining that this is success? Are we defining it, or is the person defining it?
So, questions. So let's get into a conversation for the next 20 minutes about success. Thoughts and observations from you all, because this makes a huge difference on how we are going to report and how we're going to claim what we do. Yes, ma'am.
I hear that all the things that you just mentioned as success are more external values and external sort of actions. I guess I'm curious about the thoughts about what about those intrinsic things? What about like regaining self-agency and intrinsic motivation and confidence and autonomy?
That's good. Good. What about being more informed, being mindful about what you're doing? What about making choice? Other thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
As I have been looking at the data of our clients, I've been seeing that a lot of them have no education, junior high school dropout. Some of them are educated, but a lot of them are unemployed. So it goes back to bringing them hope and this self-confidence in that, we providing them resources and linking them to resources that can help them to regain that hope and help them to regain that confidence in maybe getting a GED or linking them to, reaching out to small business owners or corporations to help these people get back into society and become more productive. And they add, and then bringing their families back together, whereas they can regain those relationships with family.
It's good.
Get that support.
Good.
I would actually argue that that's probably the key, really. I start with a slide. I'm actually still working on it. But in my presentation,
Dr. Aaron Wall.
I'm an emergency physician, but what you just said is my first slide in most of my presentations, and that is that we're not dealing with an opioid problem, we're actually dealing with an addiction problem. Mm-hmm. And what is addiction? Or what predisposes somebody to addiction? And so the best research that's out there that really is making conversations in the academic world is these two economists from Princeton that came up with the definition of diseases of despair. And those are substance abuse, alcohol abuse, substance abuse, mostly opioids, alcohol abuse, and then suicide. And the reason that those have become more prominent, and we're seeing them only in the United States, actually, it's a phenomenon specific to the United States, is because of these negative social determinants. And these social determinants are, loss of employment, stagnant wages, isolation, loss of the marital unit, and undereducation. And those social determinants lead to hopelessness. And so it's very interesting because policymakers, if you read J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly Elegy, it's fantastic. It basically talks about that all in one little book. It's phenomenal. It's very intellectually honest. And he says that, a lot of times this really relates to culturally what we're teaching our kids and being intellectually honest about our family units, being intellectually honest about education and the importance of education, and then, of course, providing some sort of social capital so that they can have a chance to be less hopeless. And I'll continue and then I'll stop. But, and law, the importance of that law and penalties associated with drug use are causing as a major negative social determinant. In other words, law, if you get a felony arrest, that person is finished. I mean, for a successful, rehabilitation or hope as far as being a successful member of society. So I'm here to preach the importance of medications, but definitely as a unit, as a cohesive collective, we all have to focus primarily on what you two mentioned.
And one of the frustrations, because I don't think anything you just said, this group doesn't agree with or wouldn't agree with. One of the frustrations you frequently talk about, and I get, is so we get funded to do this, but we're expected to do this. And how do you do this with this funding? And I think it's a very legitimate question around what we can do and how we can do it.
So I'll put a challenge, because I'm kind of looking through these cards. So that's true, right? We've always looked at ourselves as treatment providers, and as I look at these cards, a pretty good majority of them say success should be defined as completion of treatment and going to groups and going to therapy. So I guess my question would be, if you're looking at success for a person, why would completing something actually make you successful? I mean, is the belief that a person can only be successful if they go to therapy or attend groups? I mean, is that the general kind of belief?
No, not for me. Definitely not.
No. Because it's interesting, because it's really
But
predominant.
if that's the bulk of the cards, then the answer is yes. It is what we believe.
So how do we turn that, right? So how do we start thinking about how do we measure success differently? And it's not about how many groups somebody attends or, and if you really look at individualized care, right? I mean, there's thousands of people, by the way, who live a really happy lifestyle, who've overcome lots without ever stepping foot into treatment, without ever stepping foot into AANA. There are people who are living successful lives who used to be heroin addicts who now maybe drink on the weekends and have jobs and do that. So, as we redefine this, and this is an opportunity to have input into policy. If our policies are part of the problem, if how we define success, let's rewrite it.
Why do we ever have to discharge somebody if we haven't seen them in 30 days?
I don't know why.
That's crazy. You go to the doctor, once every 6 months, once a year. You're still his patient. It's just a checkup.
It's fascinating to me as a physician,
Write it down.
as a clinician, what's super frustrating is everyone expects addiction treatment to be perfect.
Right.
And I'm just like, wait a second, if I put a stent in your heart and you've had a heart attack, and you come back with chest pain and that stent has occluded or blocked off again, do we say, oh, the
I
stent
failed.
doesn't work, I fail. What about COPD? I mean, we treat people with emphysema and they're recalcitrant. They come back 6 times a year. But do I say that, oh, these drugs
You're
don't work?
fired as a
Give it-
patient.
You're done? It's insanity.
Or
It is.
does Congress then say it's not worth investing in that medicine? I'm a cancer survivor. Nobody would have ever blamed my oncologist if I still had cancer today. You know, nobody would say, oh, this cancer treatment doesn't work. We've had 4 people that have died of their cancer, even though they went through chemo, everything. So it's about reframing. If we're gonna continue to say this is a medical condition, which it is, and we're trying to bring that message in very hard and very concise, then we have to act like medical professionals. It's exactly like.
So at
if
the
that
last
is-
meeting, one of the things you all brought up is why do we, when we discharge somebody, we have to say they're drug-free? So, and I remember Justin on the stage saying, so if I'm shooting dope behind a dumpster for 3 years, and now on Friday night I smoke a joint, but when you're discharging me, I have a dirty urine because it's coming.
A positive urine.
I'm sorry, a positive urine. A positive urine, a positive urine. You're going to get me today. But a positive urine, then why is that not successful? And we brought that question up, and I don't know if anything changed. Did we change that?
No, because we went into FASM's hell. So there you go.
I think if you ask the patients this question, their response would be spending less time today thinking about drugs than I did yesterday. You see people in treatment for an extended amount of time that say, I haven't thought about using in the longest time. Typically, those are people that are doing really well. And if somebody's in the emergency room, and sometimes that could be measured in seconds, sometimes minutes, sometimes hours, whatever. But I think if you ask...
That's a good point. And when Darren talks, he'll be talking about, in the Vivitrol program, self-reported reduced cravings is part of what we're saying is success. Other people, comments, Mary Lynn.
I really think engagement with the medical community, not only engagement of the client and the patient with us, but engagement of the medical community referring to us as a specialty. Not just from the ERs, but from primary care and from OBGYNs and becoming part of that medical community. Without these resources, we wouldn't have been able to even offer that because we didn't have enough money. But that has been a really positive thing of people reaching out to us. Can we have a tour? We have behavioral health in our primary care office now. Can you tell us what you can provide when they need it? Those kind of things are really...
I mentioned earlier, a fundamental shift has taken place in behavioral health providers with the addition of the medical. Plus, there's this extensive conversation about integration. We've been talking about it for 5 years now, and a lot of you have made really significant efforts to integrate with primary care. Somebody over here, yes, ma'am. So did you get that when she's saying they have to track qualitative measures, and because in some respects that's what funding and what public expectation is and other things like that. So how do you walk that fine line? Yes, Shelley.
I think as we have these conversations and the policy is slow to follow, and when we talk about payers of behavioral health services, I mean, we have managed care entities that deny payment for buprenorphine because the individual tests positive for THC. So that, to me, is so counter to everything that we're talking about, and how do we address that as a system?
They're beginning to listen. I think that I agree 100%, and it's super frustrating. But I mean, as sort of we're engaging with like Florida Blue and Aetna, I mean, they're asking us questions as providers about what can they do. We're providing the financial case for MAT, saying, hey, idiots, you know, this is going to cost you less in the long run. There's a big ROI here. And so they are beginning to listen, but I just think that we have to increase those lines of communication and you know.
And that is one of the reasons we, FADAA, Florida Behavioral Health Association, now one association, has been promoting parity. Because if you have parity, they can't do artificial, in physical health, you don't put limitations like that. Oh, you're diabetic, you ate a cookie, yeah, you can't come back, or we're going to deny you care. You can't do that. But in behavioral health, we do it all the time. We draw these...
For decades,
Yep.
and nothing has changed substantially to move closer to one.
In Florida, nothing has changed. 3 states have passed comprehensive parity legislation. The Attorney General in New York has filed suit against Aetna and others and won in that. So there is building case law, three cases now in favor of the patients. So there's a national movement through the Kennedy Forum to get states to embed parity. We live in Florida. So, you know, we will continue to push, and the continuing to push nationally. You're right, the legislation passed 10 years ago. So other comments about success. What other thoughts do you all have about that? Yes, sir. Ken.
I come from it from a different perspective of the provider. I come from it from a person in recovery. And 2 things. Number one, being able to sit in this room side by side with the providers and the people who helped me get here, and being able to work towards a common goal. And that's amazing to me. But I look back at my efforts of sometimes what we look at as success of going to meetings and therapy and counseling and all of these things that we do after we leave treatment and we're in recovery. And I had to finally realize that that's not my destination. That's the vehicle getting me to my purpose, to be happy and to be well in life, to be able to go fishing and diving and flying, to have time with my family, to be happy. That was simply the mechanism, the vehicle to get me where I was going. And I have to be careful to remember that all the time. Where is my purpose? What is my end goal? And those are the things that get me there.
I just said to Uda, the fact that what you just said, here I am sitting with my treatment peers in the same room, was a huge statement. I think it's very cool reflecting on where we've become. I was with a meeting with Ken last week, and he was talking about learning how to go fishing without the cooler in the boat, and how cool that is to still be able to do what he loves, but be able to do it without the cooler. Other comments, Jacqueline?
As we have been talking about the emergency departments and how we're using the peer specialists there to work with the clients that come there and then supply them with the view. My question regarding this is, so once we have the peer specialists in the EDs and we're giving them medication, so what happens next? Because one of the things that I've been faced with our organization is there are people who are coming out from that emergency departments, but we're not actually linking them to care after the fact.
So the whole purpose of the peers in the ED is, number one, to just educate the person coming in on the options that are out there, that there's 3 FDA-approved medications, that there's recovery supports, there's treatment, you know, open up that basket of all the different options. And then in that discussion, if that person, for example, opts to induct and you happen to have an ER, like Dr. Wolves, where he could induce buprenorphine right on the spot, it would be that peer's job to link to a maintenance provider. So you wouldn't want to set up something like that unless you had a vehicle, a provider who is that direct linkage to maintenance treatment. So that's the purpose of the peer. And the peer can also do that peer support as the person transitions to the maintenance provider. They can do home visits, they can follow up with the person, they can do a lot of those things. But the point is to get them to a maintenance treatment program.
So this conversation we had on success will play out as we talk through the rest of the day. And I think it'll drive over the next 18 months as we deal with this, helping us relook at, are there some policies, are there some issues, are there some things we have to readdress that you want the state to readdress? Certainly the providers have been having that conversation with themselves about rethinking about the business that we do and how we do the business. Some of the changes I talked about earlier are certainly making everybody rethink about this. And it's interesting, as Uda said, you get the cards and the cards say, well, success is you go to your groups, you go to your treatment appointments, you go to this, you go to that. Well, what if you don't? I remember the last session we had, the very first issue that came up was somebody said, well, when they're non-resistant, when they're not participating, we discharge them. Well, they're there because they have a substance use disorder, so a positive urine is probably part of what is a substance use disorder. So are we discharging people because they have positive urines? Are we we really have to think of what are we there for, and how long do we go on the journey with somebody, and what part do they have to do to be on the journey with us? But I really think it's really important for providers to think, do we abandon our patients too quick?
And I want to just restate what Ken said too, because I love that. Treatment is not the goal. Treatment shouldn't be the goal, how many groups we attend, how many therapy sessions, and I see that on plans all the time. Treatment is the intervention, it's not the goal. The goal is what the person wants for themselves in their recovery. So I think that's perfect. Thinking,
I would say it's not, it's like we say with
vehicle.
life. I mean, it's not the train destination, it's the journey. It's staying on the train, keeping them on the train. Any positive step towards recovery, there's no end stop, in my opinion. And I want to just really hammer home what you said, Mark, and about we have to reanalyze what we're doing to patients when we kick them out of treatment. And I want to say, and I'm going to be the intellectually honest guy, you guys are probably, a lot of you will not like me towards the end, but I'm here for patients, and that's okay. And I'm not an arrogant person, I promise. I just very much like to say it exactly like it should be said. And that, in my opinion, Mark, is because medicine, number one, abdicated its responsibility to treat addicts in the 30s and 40s, and we gave it up to the 12-step program. Now, God bless the 12-step program for doing a lot of cures, and a lot of people in this room are successful with it, and it brings community and encouragement. But I have to say that although the 12 steps says that it's a disease, they really treat it a lot like a moral failing. And they use a moral high ground when instituting, you have a dirty urine or a positive urine, you're done. I mean, they are treating that disease process like a moral failing. You morally failed, you used drugs, you're out. And so I really believe that the whole treatment community needs to reassess its reliance on the 12-step program and the hardcore, dogmatic reliance on it.
I think as you learn more, you're going to find out that a lot of the treatment industry does not rely just on the 12-step program, that we, by contract and by practice are using evidence-based practices. They're using evidence-based interventions. They're using evidence-based strategies that have been validated over time. And they're using the support group to help wrap that. So I think you will find a bigger engagement as you talk to the providers. So talk to people in here today. I understand what you're saying, don't get me wrong, but you know, it's that whole thing about whoever said AA or NA is treatment. And where did we go down the pike saying that is treatment, when treatment are many of the other things you all talked about and the pieces that have to take place. And I always understood AA and NA as supplemental strategies to help people find their recovery.